10 games that flopped, but are actually fantastic, and you need to check out.
Who has a transmitter?
The Order 1886. Man, The Order 1886 got so much hate when it came out, and honestly, it didn't deserve all of it. Yeah, it had problems, but it's way better than people remember. First off, the graphics are stunning. Even today, the game looks insanely good. The lighting, the character models, the atmosphere, it all makes you feel like you're actually in this dark, moody, alternate history London where knights fight werewolves. The whole thing feels cinematic as hell.
Take his arms. Gently, monsieur.
And the setting is amazing. It takes place in a steampunk version of Victorian London, where you play as Sir Galahad, a knight of the Order, hunting down rebels and supernatural creatures. The world building is top-notch, mixing old-school knights with futuristic weapons in a way that feels fresh and unique. The biggest complaint people had was the length. The game is short, around 6 hours long, and a lot of that is spent in cutscenes and slow walking sections. People expected a full open-world action game, but what they got was a cinematic shooter, kind of like an interactive movie with a solid story. And the combat is actually pretty fun. The weapons feel powerful, especially the thermite rifle and arc gun, and taking cover while blasting enemies feels smooth and satisfying. The problem is there's not enough of it. The game ends right when it starts getting really good, which left a lot of players frustrated. The werewolves are underused. The game sets up so much cool stuff, but it just stops before it can truly explore its best ideas. Even with all that, The Order 1886 is still a fantastic experience if you go in with the right expectations. It's short, but it's a beautiful, well-crafted world with a cool story and fun gameplay. If you love cinematic single-player games with great atmosphere, this one is worth playing, especially if you can grab it cheap. Quantum Break. Quantum Break is one of those games that tried to do something really different, but people just didn't know what to make of it. It's part third-person shooter, part time-bending action game, and part live-action TV show, all mixed into one. Some people thought that was really cool, others thought it was too weird, and in the end, the game kinda got forgotten.
I know how you did this.
You think I wanted to come back?
The story is about Jack Joyce, a guy who gets caught in a time travel experiment gone wrong. The world is glitching, time is breaking apart, and Jack ends up with crazy time powers. Meanwhile, a powerful corporation called Monarch Solutions is trying to control time itself, and Jack has to fight back before reality collapses completely. The gameplay is awesome. It's a third-person shooter, but the time powers make it so much more fun. You can freeze enemies, dash around like a blur, create time shields, and even throw explosive time blasts. Everything feels fast, fluid, and unique, way different from just another cover shooter. And then there's the TV show part. After each major chapter, you get a live-action episode that plays out depending on the choices you made. The production value is actually really solid, with well-known actors like Shawn Ashmore and Aidan Gill. The idea was cool, but a lot of players just wanted to play the game, not sit through a 20-minute show, so it kind of slowed things down for some people. Even with those issues, Quantum Break is still a fantastic game. The combat is fun and unique, the visuals look great, and the way time itself is breaking apart makes for some crazy cool moments. If you love sci-fi stories, time travel, and action-packed gameplay, this game is definitely worth checking out. Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. Alright, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy is one of the biggest surprises in gaming. When it came out, a lot of people just ignored it, mostly because they thought it would be another Avengers mess. But man, this game is actually fantastic. You play as Star-Lord, leading the Guardians on another one of their crazy galaxy-saving adventures. The story is top tier, full of hilarious moments, emotional twists, and some of the best written dialogue in any Marvel game.
This thing could swallow us in one bite!
The banter never stops, and it actually makes you feel like you're hanging out with a bunch of lovable idiots who somehow managed to save the universe. The combat is super fun, even though it's not what some people expected. You only control Star-Lord, but you command the rest of the team in battle. Rocket throws explosives, Groot heals, Drax smashes, Gamora slashes. It all works together in a way that makes fights feel fast and strategic at the same time. And when the huddle up mechanic kicks in, where you pause the fight to hype up the team with 80s music blasting in the background, it's just pure fun. The soundtrack is a whole vibe. Classic 8's hits from Bonnie Tyler, Europe, and Rick Astley play during key moments, making everything feel way more epic. Seriously, fighting a space monster while Never Gonna Give You Up is playing? Unforgettable.
Now that was a ride.
Now, for the downsides, the gameplay isn't super deep. It's fun, but it doesn't change much as you go on, and some fights can start to feel a bit samey. Also, there's no replayability since it's a linear story-driven game with no free roam or post-game content. Once you beat it, there's not much reason to go back unless you just want to experience the story again.
I commend you!
Honestly, that doesn't even matter because the story alone makes this game worth playing. It's got so much heart, and by the end you actually feel connected to the team. This isn't a cheap Marvel cash grab, it's a love letter to the Guardians that tells an amazing story with great humor, emotional moments, and an insane amount of charm. It flopped because of bad marketing and low expectations, but honestly, it's one of the best superhero games in years. If you love Marvel, great storytelling, and a fun single-player experience, Guardians of the Galaxy is a must-play. Days Gone. When Days Gone came out, a lot of people hated on it, but honestly, it didn't deserve that. It wasn't a total flop, it actually sold well, but critics were too harsh and that hurt its reputation. After some updates, the game is way better now, and people finally see how good it really is. You play as Deacon St. John, a biker trying to survive after the world has been destroyed by freakers, fast, scary zombies that move in massive groups. But Deacon isn't just fighting to stay alive, he's searching for the woman he thought he lost, and that makes the story way more personal. The world feels real and dangerous. Roads are broken, small towns are empty, and you never know when a giant horde of freakers is going to show up. Sometimes you're riding your bike through a peaceful forest, and the next second, hundreds of zombies come running at you. The game keeps you on edge the whole time. The hordes are insane. Most zombie games give you a few enemies at a time. Here, you're running, setting traps, throwing explosives, and trying to survive while an entire wave of freakers is chasing you. The feeling of barely making it out alive is what makes the game so fun. Your bike is everything. It's not just for fast travel, you need to repair it, fuel it, and upgrade it. If you run out of gas in the middle of nowhere, you're in trouble. It makes the world feel bigger and more immersive because you actually have to plan your trips carefully. Now the bad stuff. The game starts slow. The first few hours are a little repetitive and some missions feel the same. The story gets really good, but it takes a while to get there. Also, when it first came out, it had a lot of bugs and that made people give up on it too soon. But now, it runs great. The gameplay is super fun, the world is huge, and the story actually gets emotional. It may not be as polished as some other big games, but it's a really solid open world zombie game. Days Gone didn't deserve all the hate it got. It may not have been a perfect game, but it was way better than people thought. Now, it's a hidden gem that more people should try.
Don't want to insult a man in his own.
Mad Max. Mad Max is one of the most underrated open world games ever made. It didn't exactly flop, but it didn't get the attention it deserved, mostly because it came out the same week as Metal Gear Solid 5. People were too busy playing that, and Mad Max just got ignored. But honestly, this game is amazing. You play as Max, a lone survivor in a massive desert wasteland. Your goal is simple: build the ultimate car, survive, and take down the warlord ruling the land. The story isn't anything groundbreaking, but it does a great job of making you feel like you're in a Mad Max movie.
We need to go.
The wasteland feels alive. Even though it's just a desert, it never feels empty. There are ruined buildings, hidden caves, massive sandstorms, and enemy convoys always roaming around. You're always finding scraps, supplies, or crazy new locations. And the car combat? Easily the best part of the game. Your car, the magnum opus, is everything. You upgrade it with better armor, bigger weapons, faster engines, and take it into insane high-speed battles. You can slam enemy vehicles off cliffs, shoot harpoons to rip off armor, and blow up convoys in the middle of the desert. Every fight feels intense and cinematic. The hand-to-hand combat is also super satisfying. It's like Batman Arkham, but way more brutal. You punch, counter, and use crazy takedowns to destroy enemies in brutal, post-apocalyptic brawls. Now the bad stuff. The story is pretty simple, it does its job, but it's mostly just an excuse to keep you moving. The missions also get a little repetitive: clear a base, fight some warlords, grab some loot, repeat. Some people also felt like the world was too empty, but honestly, that's kind of the point. It's a wasteland and the loneliness makes it feel even more real. Even with its flaws, Mad Max is one of the best open-world action games out there. If you love crazy car combat, brutal fights, and a world that feels dangerous and unforgiving, this game is 100% worth playing. It never got the love it deserved, but now, it's a hidden masterpiece. Prince of Persia 2008. Some games come out at the wrong time, and Prince of Persia 2008 is one of them. It was a fresh start for the series with a completely new story, art style, and gameplay, but instead of being a massive hit, it ended up being overlooked and forgotten. This version of Prince of Persia throws away the gritty, realistic look of the older games and goes for a beautiful hand-painted art style. Every part of the world looks like a living painting with bright colors, huge landscapes, and smooth animation. Even today, the game still looks stunning. The story follows a wandering adventurer, the prince, and a mysterious woman named Elika. Together, they're trying to stop an ancient darkness from spreading. There's a real connection between the two characters, and their constant dialogue makes the journey feel personal. Unlike other Prince of Persia games, this one is all about teamwork, with Elika helping you in combat, platforming, and puzzles. Speaking of platforming, it's incredible. The game flows like a dream, with the prince running across walls, leaping between cliffs, and swinging from poles in long, smooth chains of movement. It feels effortless, almost like a rhythm game where everything just clicks. Combat, though, that's where opinions get mixed. Instead of fighting groups of enemies, the game focuses on one-on-one duels with bigger, stronger foes. The fights are cinematic and stylish, but they don't have the same depth and challenge as previous games. Some people loved it, others found it too simple. One of the biggest complaints was the no-death mechanic. If you fall in battle or miss a jump, Elika instantly saves you, so there's no real punishment. Some players felt that this made the game too easy, but honestly it just keeps the flow going without frustrating restarts. But even with all that, Prince of Persia 2008 is a game worth playing. It's relaxing, beautiful, and tells a great story. If you love smooth platforming, gorgeous worlds, and a unique take on the series, this is a hidden gem that deserves more recognition. Castlevania Lords of Shadow. Castlevania Lords of Shadow was supposed to be a big comeback for the franchise. Instead, it got mixed reactions, mostly because it didn't feel like a traditional Castlevania game. But if you step back and look at it for what it is, this game is actually fantastic. First off, this is not a classic 2D Castlevania. It's a third-person action-adventure, more like God of War or Shadow of the Colossus than the old-school Metroidvania formula. That alone turned some fans away, but the game itself, it's a dark, cinematic, action-packed journey, and it does that really well. You play as Gabriel Belmont, a warrior of the Brotherhood of Light, on a mission to defeat the Lords of Shadow and bring his wife back from the dead. The story starts simple, but by the time you reach the end, it takes some insane turns that totally reimagine Castlevania lore. And that final twist? One of the best in gaming history.
A force so powerful that all reason...
The world feels massive and mysterious. You travel through dark forests, haunted ruins, icy mountains, and gothic castles, all of which look stunning. The art direction is incredible, and even today, the game holds up visually. Combat is fast and brutal. Gabriel wields the combat cross, which is basically a holy whip that tears through enemies in flashy combos. You've got light and dark magic, tons of special abilities, and some huge boss fights that feel like they came straight out of Shadow of the Colossus. Now the downsides. The pacing feels slow at times, especially in the first few hours. Some platforming sections can be frustrating, and there are puzzles that kind of kill the momentum. The game also doesn't have much exploration. It's linear, so if you're expecting something like Symphony of the Night, this isn't that. But as an action-adventure game, Lords of Shadow is amazing. The combat is fun, the world is atmospheric, and the story is dark and emotional. It got overlooked by fans because it didn't feel like Castlevania, but if you judge it on its own, it's one of the best action games of its time.
The Guardian of the Lake. I will take you to him.
Alpha Protocol. Alpha Protocol was supposed to be a game changer, an RPG where you play as a spy and every choice actually matters. Instead, it flopped hard because of janky gameplay and bugs, but underneath all that, it's a fantastic, one-of-a-kind experience that never got the love it deserved.
Good, you're awake.
He plays Michael Fortin, a secret agent who gets betrayed and disavowed by his own agency. Now, he's on his own, trying to uncover a conspiracy, track down enemies, and survive while the world turns against him. It's a full-on spy thriller, but unlike most action games, this one is actually an RPG. The best part of the game is the choices. Every mission, every conversation, and every decision changes the story in huge ways. People remember what you say, react to how you treat them, and the game doesn't just give you a good or bad system. Instead, you pick different spy personas, be charming like James Bond, aggressive like Jason Bourne, or cold and professional like Sam Fisher. How you talk to people completely changes how they see you and whether they help or betray you later. Combat is where the game struggled. The shooting feels clunky and the AI is kind of dumb. The stealth system works, but it's not great, and sometimes enemies spot you when they shouldn't. It's clear the game needed more polish, and that's what held it back from being a real hit.
Careful.
But even with the rough gameplay, the RPG systems are amazing. You level up skills like hacking hand-to-hand combat or weapon handling, and the more you invest in them, the more powerful and precise you become. At first, guns feel unreliable, but once you level up pistols, you can pull off crazy trick shots that instantly take out enemies. The story is what makes this game special. It's dynamic, reactive, and full of twists, and by the end, your version of the story might be completely different from someone else's. No two playthroughs are the same, which makes it one of the most replayable RPGs ever made. It flopped because of bad marketing and janky mechanics, but if you can get past the rough edges, Alpha Protocol is one of the best spy RPGs ever made. It may be messy, but it's a hidden masterpiece for people who love deep choices and branching stories.
Oh, I figured that was all done while I was unconscious.
Enslaved, Odyssey to the West. Enslaved Odyssey to the West is one of those games that just came and went, but honestly, it deserved way more attention. It had a great story, fun gameplay, and two of the best written characters in any action-adventure game, but for some reason it never really took off. The game is set 150 years in the future, after the world has basically fallen apart. Cities are covered in plants, old buildings are crumbling, and killer robots called mechs roam the land, attacking anything that moves. You play as Monkey, a strong, acrobatic warrior who gets captured and wakes up with a slave headband on his head. The person who put it there? Trip, a smart but desperate woman who needs help getting home. The headband forces Monkey to follow her orders, and if she dies, he dies too. So, like it or not, he has to help her survive. The story is incredible. Monkey and Trip start off as total strangers, but over time their relationship slowly builds. The way they interact, argue, and eventually trust each other makes them feel real and human. Their conversations feel natural, and by the end you actually care about what happens to them. Gameplay-wise, the platforming and exploration are super fun. Monkey can climb, swing, and jump across ruins with ease, making traversal feel smooth and satisfying. The combat is simple but fun, with Monkey using a big staff to smash mechs into pieces. You can also use Trip's tech to distract enemies or set up traps, making fights feel more tactical. The world is gorgeous. Unlike most post-apocalyptic games that are just brown and gray, Enslaved is bright, colorful, and full of life. The abandoned cities are covered in greenery and sunlight, making everything feel more unique and beautiful. Sunset Overdrive. Sunset Overdrive is one of those games that just explodes with energy, but for some reason it didn't get the love it deserved. It was fun, fast, and completely ridiculous, but it kind of got ignored because it was an Xbox One exclusive when it launched. If it had come out on more platforms back then, it probably would have been way bigger. This game doesn't take itself seriously at all, and that's what makes it so good. You play as a random nobody working a dead-end job when a new energy drink turns people into mutant freaks. Instead of freaking out, your character fully embraces the chaos, jumping into this insane world with zero fear and a ton of sarcasm. The movement is the best part. You don't just run around normally, you grind on rails, bounce off cars, wall run on buildings, and basically never stop moving. It's like Tony Hawk mixed with a shooter, and once you get the hang of it, it feels incredible. And the weapons? Completely insane. There's a gun that shoots vinyl records, another one that launches explosive teddy bears, and even a freeze bomb made from liquid nitrogen. Every weapon feels unique and fun to use, and the game constantly throws new ones at you. The world is bright, colorful, and full of style. Everything is exaggerated, huge explosions, neon lights, ridiculous character outfits. It's all designed to feel like a mix of comic books and punk rock energy. Even the enemies are crazy, from giant mutated monsters to killer robots and gang members trying to take over the city. Now, the downsides. The story is super basic. It's mostly just an excuse for all the chaos. Some people also didn't like the over-the-top humor, which is basically non-stop sarcasm and fourth wall breaking. If that's not your thing, it might get old fast. And then there's the fact that not many people played it because it was locked to Xbox for years. By the time it came to PC, it was too late to build a big audience. But honestly, Sunset Overdrive is one of the most fun open-world games ever made. The movement, the weapons, the style, it's all about having a good time. If you love fast-paced action, crazy weapons, and games that don't take themselves too seriously, this one is a must-play. Alien Isolation. Alien Isolation is one of the scariest games ever made, but when it came out, not many people gave it a chance. Some thought it would be another boring action game, but instead it turned out to be a real survival horror experience. You play as Amanda Ripley, the daughter of Ellen Ripley from the Alien movies. She goes to a space station to find out what happened to her mother, but everything is a mess. The station is falling apart, people are fighting for supplies, and the worst part, there's an alien hunting you. This alien is not like normal enemies in games. It does not follow a set path. It listens for your footsteps, checks hiding spots, and learns how you play. You can't kill it, so the only way to survive is to stay quiet, hide, and run at the right time. Every time you hear its footsteps or its loud scream, your heart starts racing. The space station looks amazing. Everything feels like it came straight from the old Alien movies. The computers, the rooms, the sounds, it all feels real. You hear beeping from your motion tracker, distant alarms, and the alien crawling in the vents above you. It makes you feel trapped and alone. But the game has some problems. It is very long, and sometimes it feels too slow. The human enemies and robots are not as scary as the alien. The game is also very hard because the alien never stops chasing you. Some players got frustrated because they kept dying. Even with these problems, Alien Isolation is one of the best horror games. If you love slow, scary survival horror, this is a game you should play. It wasn't a big success at launch, but now people call it a horror masterpiece. Sleeping Dogs. Sleeping Dogs is one of those games that did everything right, but still got ignored by a lot of people. It had an amazing open world, great combat, and a really fun story, but for some reason it didn't get the same hype as other big open world games. You play as Wei Shen, an undercover cop who goes deep into the Hong Kong triads. His job is to take them down from the inside, but the more he gets involved, the harder it becomes to tell who he really is, a cop or a gangster. The story is serious, emotional, and full of crazy moments, kind of like an Asian crime movie. Hong Kong feels alive. The streets are crowded with people, bright neon signs, and markets full of vendors. You can race through the city on motorcycles, eat street food, or just explore the different districts. It's not as big as something like GTA, but it feels unique and packed with detail. The combat is the best part. Unlike other open world games that focus on guns, this game is all about hand-to-hand fighting. You can punch, kick, counter enemies, and use brutal environmental takedowns, like slamming a guy's head into a fridge or throwing him into a dumpster. It feels smooth and satisfying, kinda like the Batman Arkham combat, but more brutal. Driving is also really fun. You can ram enemy cars off the road, jump from one car to another in high-speed chases, and every vehicle handles smoothly. It makes action scenes feel fast and cinematic. Now, the downsides. The gunplay is just okay. The game has some shooting sections, but the guns don't feel as great as the melee combat. Also, once you finish the story, there isn't much to do in the open world. There are some side missions and collectibles, but the world feels a little empty compared to GTA or Yakuza. Even with that, Sleeping Dogs is one of the best open-world crime games ever made. The hand-to-hand combat, great story, and detailed world make it a must-play. It never got a sequel, but fans still love it today. If you missed this game, now's the perfect time to play it.